profits or player satisfaction. I actually platinumed Alan Wake 2, and I thought it was one of the worst games I played all year since it was more a TV show than a video game. I gave the game the benefit of the doubt, and I wanted to see it through before I gave my own opinion on it. And my feelings of the game actually got worse the longer I played it. As the enemies were lame, the levels were constantly reused, the gameplay mechanics felt lackluster at best, and the game sidelined its main character for most of it. And call me whatever you want, but when I sit down to play a video game, I want to play the game, not watch it more than I'm getting to do things within it. So congrats to Remedy, you pandered your way into critics' hearts, but it looks like when it comes to the actual paying customer, not many people actually buy your product. And the reception and fate of Alan Wake 2 is oftentimes how these ESG woke things end up going. The people who get free codes or exclusive access love these things, mostly because, they don't have to pay for it. But like always, when it comes to actually supporting these diverse and inclusive pieces of media, these woke morons never show up. They didn't show up to save the marbles, they didn't save Wish even though it was inclusive and pandered, they didn't even save The Little Mermaid or anything else. Ultimately, these decisions are just leading to a duality that is splintering the paying customer and the critics who pander down the middle almost always. Spider-Man 2, for example, pandered like crazy, and hilariously, it won absolutely nothing at the Game Awards either. All that pandering, like playing as a deaf girl, or making players forced to watch a gay student while removing their player agency, or turning Peter Parker into a cuck and sidelining him for miles, and even the critics who drank those ESG smoothies couldn't be bothered to give them a crumb of an award. So, congrats to Insomniac on losing player trust when it comes to their future games by showing they will destroy any goodwill or relevancy in order to bend the knee, and I genuinely laugh knowing they won nothing for it anyway. And circling back to that report on ESG, it turns out the investments from American companies alone when it comes to pandering has dropped from $17 trillion to around $8.4 trillion recently, which is, yes, still an absurd amount of money, but you don't have to be good at math to see how much companies are scaling back already. The Daily Mail interviewed the executive director of Consumers Research, whose name is Will Hill, and he says the collapse of ESG is, in his own words, startling. Will said, the market for ESG bonds decreased significantly in the past 2 years, as state leaders from across the country have fought back against the injection of woke politics into the bond market. Also, to give you some more lore, the economic boom of ESG and woke identity politics hit an all-time high in 2020, where investments rose more than 20% during that single period. Which makes sense, since when you look at all the things we've been suffering through from identity politically driven remakes and games that pander, all of this stuff was a part of that boom in 2020. But as the Daily Mail puts it, but the breathless pace of the ESG boom that characterized the previous decade appears to be winding down and even reversing as ever more traders and fund managers sour on the asset class. Will Hill also just plainly states in the article during his interview that the investment in woke content is simply a bad investment for everyone involved, which I mean, he's out of line, but he's right. And finally, in this report, they finish by saying that they fully expect the massive decline in investments in pandering to get worse in 2024. But of course, this isn't stopping the nonsense parade from continuing, since we have this article from thatparkplace.com titled, Rumor, Kathleen Kennedy expediting Daisy Ridley's Reign movie, Disney executives terrified of another The Marvels failing. According to this newest rumor, the new Star Wars movie that absolutely nobody wants is being spearheaded by Kathleen Kennedy into getting made as soon as possible. The reports claim Kennedy wants her Rey sequel movie to start production as early as April 2024. Oh, that's really soon. She also wants the budget of this film to be around $220 million, but Disney's executives are trying to convince her to lower it to around $170 million. And remember that this film will be directed by Charlene O'Boy Chenoy, who also directed such hits as Miss Marvel for Disney+. You know, the show that was the least watched MCU TV show in Disney's entire history, featuring a character that nobody cares about. So Kathleen Kennedy is sticking to her guns and proving the Panderverse right, as she throws a Hail Mary to ensure her feminist force's female future comes to fruition at all costs. This entire scoop comes from YouTuber WDW Pro, who's been an insanely reliable source for all of these leaks, and they said, and I quote, "She is allegedly in a very big hurry to get this movie into full-on production that includes trying to reserve locations very fast, out of the strike, as well as getting everything tucked away and done and put into place. They want to move fast. Still, I am told not to expect this film out until at the very earliest late 2025, but almost assuredly 2026. That means that even when this comes out, it will still have been basically a decade since Disney made money with Star Wars. Disney executives are very worried about this because of the Marvels. And here's where that worry comes from. The Marvels is unlikely to break $100 million at the domestic box office. It is an unbelievable flop. Now, what did the audience say about Captain Marvel for years? They said we didn't want to go see Captain Marvel. We went because you told us we had to see what was going to happen in our favorite movies. And then, because it was not a good movie, now we dislike this character. And then the audience celebrated when Captain Marvel was not in other movies very much. And then when Disney said, no, she's popular, here's the movie, go see it, here's the sequel, fans reacted poorly. Rey is magnitudes higher than that, because the way that Rey worked is that when The Force Awakens came out, fans were told, you've got to see this to see all of your original characters that you love, and that didn't happen. And then they were told, you gotta go see The Last Jedi because you got to see actual Master Luke training Rey, and that didn't happen. And then they were told, you gotta go see The Rise of Palpatine because you got to see how this actually plays out. We got a super secret plan to make all of this worthwhile, like we're going to redeem all of these characters, and then that didn't happen. That's 3 big movies that people were forced to go see where their favorite heroes were desecrated and where Rey was elevated. And I think the Disney executives know this could actually be worse than the Marvels, end quote. And I can already hear some people saying there's no way a mainline Star Wars film can flop. But then again, a lot of people also said the Marvels would be a hit, and look what happened there. Captain Marvel made $1 billion thanks to the hype of Endgame. And without that same hype, the Marvels made barely 20% of what the original film made. And I agree with WDW Pro. Rey is universally disliked far more than Captain Marvel is. Rey is, in a lot of ways, the blueprint of Disney's destruction. She is what popularized the phrase Mary Sue and conveys a lot of what's wrong with this new age way of creating characters. Far too many properties these days are replacing legacy characters with strong female ones, and it never works. It didn't work in Star Wars, or Indiana Jones, or He-Man, or Alan Wake, or even when they sidelined Peter Parker for Miles and Mary Jane. This shit never works. I mean, it's a big reason